Hello again, I'm attorney Robert Flessas for Robbins & Lloyd Career Training Institute. This video is part 3 of course number 5 on legislative updates in Wisconsin. In this video, we're going to discuss administrative rules promulgated by the Real Estate Examining Board, REB, which is part of the Department of Safety and Professional Services, the DSPS. Let's get started. Agencies, remember, are subdivisions of state government. There are now updated forms that you should be aware of. These are forms WB 40, Amendment to the Offer to Purchase, the WB 41, Notice Relating to Offer to Purchase, the WB 44, Counteroffer, the WB 45, Cancellation Agreement and Mutual Release, and finally, the WB 24, Option to Purchase. If you're active in real estate sales, you've been using these forms already. Let's look at the changes made to each of them. The WB 40 amendment to the offer to purchase has 2 changes. The form only adds the word "on" at line 1 of the form. That specific line reads as follows: buyer and seller to amend the offer dated blank line and accept it on then a blank line. The second change is at line 49, which reads, this amendment was rejected with a long blank line for the party initials and the date signed. This change made the initial section at the bottom of the form one long line instead of 2 separate lines to accomplish the same result. Form WB 41, Notice Relating to the Offer to Purchase, has only one change, which is similar to the one that I just spoke of. The change adds the word "on" at the line 1, which instead of reading the offer was accepted blank line, to add it accepted on. Both the notice form and the amendment form do not have any major changes. The next form change relates to WB 45, Cancellation Agreement and Mutual Release. Lines 6 through 8 now read, the parties hereby release the firms and their licensees from any and all liability for dispersing trust funds as directed, and hereby authorize and direct the firm or third party holding the earnest money or other trust funds to disperse the trust funds held on behalf of the party as follows. What are the changes? Well, 2 things are being added to the camera. 1, the form is now inserting the release from liability of both the firm and their agents for dispersing any earnest money. 2, it's authorizing directing not just the firm, but a third party that was holding the earnest money, like a title company. That change recognized that there are other entities involved in holding earnest money, not just brokers. Most offers to purchase that I've seen do state that the title company issuing the title policies will be the holder of the earnest money deposit. This change releases the party holding the earnest money from liability for the disbursement as directed in the form. The CAMR also adds an optional provision to write in the address of the person or entity that will be receiving the disbursement. Formerly, the CAMR only stated the name of the party receiving the earnest money. The counteroffer form, WB 44, also saw changes. You know, you can also call this form a counteroffer, just like Joe Pesci referred to the legal term in the movie My Cousin Vinny. By the way, that movie made new lawyers cringe, even some experienced lawyers. Even though it was fiction, new lawyers are so nervous when conducting their first trial. Well, anyhow, the changes add more room to insert the buyer's names at lines 1 and 2. Did you ever notice that it's really hard to insert all of buyer names on an offer to purchase if you use, for example, zip form? Not ripping on them, but that's true. If you wanted to add the term as survivorship marital property to buyers who are husband and wife, the form doesn't provide enough room. So they're making more room in the counteroffer form. The other change is found at lines 39 through 42 of the counteroffer. This was a good change. Instead of a party to the offer signing the amendment as either the signature of party making or accepting the counteroffer, the change states real simply buyer's signature and seller's signature. That makes it a lot easier, doesn't it? Years and years ago, the parties were stated as party of the first part and party of the second part. That was really confusing because you had to reread the whole document a billion times just to determine who was the first part party and who was the second part party. The older version of the counteroffer before this change was also confusing because you had to look at the top of the form to determine which party made the counteroffer. This change makes sense, but it took about 50 or 60 years to finally get there. The last approved form to be changed is the WB-24 option to purchase. The revisions included the assertion of condo provisions. A buyer with the option to purchase a condo unit will want to review the condo disclosure materials prior to paying their non-refundable option fee, if that's the case. Condo rules, among other important condo documents, may change prior to the buyer exercising their option. So that was a good addition. Other changes include lines 10 through 23 that spell out the option terms, like the option fee amount, the deadline for payment, what the buyer must do to exercise the option, extending the option term, and a declaration that the option fees are non-refundable unless indicated otherwise. There's also language that allows the buyer to terminate the option if the buyer objects to the quality of the title. Lines 59 through 63 add a recording option where the buyer may or may not, you strike one, record the option at the buyer's expense or record separate documents evidencing the option at the buyer's expense. There's also one of those big caution statements in bold print that says failure to record the option can give persons with subsequent interest in the property priority over the option. There's also language that allows the buyer to obtain title evidence twice, when the option is granted and the exercise of the option by the buyer. Now let's talk about legislation that's being proposed. In June of 2023, the Wisconsin legislature approved a package that encourages the increase in lower cost housing that includes loan programs to build infrastructure and convert commercial buildings to residential units and rehab housing above commercial units. Legislators are trying to increase incentives to attract younger people to move to Wisconsin. The legislature is discussing legislation to create a no-interest loan program to fund various infrastructure conversions like plumbing for senior housing developments. Now, plumbing is a big issue. Office buildings that are being considered for conversion have very limited plumbing infrastructure. Installing plumbing to meet the needs of residential housing is very expensive and has made conversion difficult to almost impossible. There's also legislation in the works that would limit the ability of residents through their regulating government bodies to block new housing. Another package would expand the eligibility for WHEDA's housing rehab loan funding. This bill is designed to remove asbestos and other environmental hazards, replace interior walls, ceilings, flooring, and fix the plumbing. There is also a bill that will create a loan program for developers to convert vacant commercial buildings to lower cost or senior housing. This program is also funded by WHEDA. Apparently, there must be lots of vacant or underutilized second and third floor units above retail spaces. They're calling this legislation the Main Street Rehab Bill. That sounds like a band. The program would allow WHEDA to provide loans up to $20,000 to update a second or third floor unit that is at least 40 years old and has not been significantly improved in 30 years. The bill also includes a requirement that the renovated unit must remain workforce housing, meaning rent doesn't exceed a certain ratio of that county's median income for at least 10 years after the rehabilitation. The legislature is also looking to convert large vacant box stores. They recognize that these large box stores have a huge footprint. They could use that footprint to build large apartment complexes to meet housing needs. They're also recognizing that most projects for workforce or senior living require developers to build the roads and extend sewer and water systems to the new development. Once the infrastructure is built out and it's complete, then the municipality becomes the owner of the infrastructure. WHEDA loans to these developers could be used to help cover the cost of building this infrastructure. Some of these bills were signed into law by Governor Evers in 2023 with the intent to make it a lot easier for developers and landlords to obtain permits for new housing construction, limit who can challenge permitting decisions, and a requirement that mandates local governments to approve permits for residential housing projects that don't violate local standards. The legislature recognized that we have a housing shortage in Wisconsin, and they're trying to conjure up measures to encourage the construction of housing, either new housing, by rehab, or by conversion. Affordable housing is very limited across this state. WIDA believes that Wisconsin needs about 120,000 more rental units to satisfy the demand. They also see that baby boomers are starting to retire and the need for attracting a younger workforce is required. The problem that Wisconsin will face is the winter weather. A lot of younger people that live in warmer climates, they may not want to come here because of our brutal winters. Well, one way to possibly resolve that issue may be to hire out-of-state workers and allow them to work from their home in the state where they reside. However, the problem is going to be states with higher living costs in those states versus Wisconsin's generally lower wages may affect a potential out-of-state employee from working with a Wisconsin company. As we get into 2024, more of this proposed legislation, after tweaking, will most likely be signed into law. Well, that's it for legislative updates. The last video for course number 5 will be our review for the test, and I'll see you in that next video.